and she's telling him, don't forget that in the midst of all of your pain and heartache, you are surrounded by beauty, the wonder of creation, art, your music and culture, the sounds of laughter and love, of whispered hopes and celebrations, of new life and transformation, of reconciliation and forgiveness. These are all the results of your choices, and every choice matters, even the hidden ones. Welcome to another episode of the Cover2Cover podcast. I am your host, Jaron Bingham. In today's episode, we are going to discuss who God is, and we're going to do that by way of William Paul Young's 2007 book, The Shack. I'm very fortunate to be joined by a good friend, my boy Free the Vision, who has put me on this book. And so we're just going to jump right into it, my guy.
Okay.
Why The Shack, man? 130 million books. And you picked The Shack.
Is that how many books there are?
There are. That's how many books are in the world.
I think that's a lie.
No, I literally no.
Who's counting?
Nah, I Googled it. I swear I Googled it. I was like,
Google
before I go in there and just say some stuff on the podcast, let me just make sure that
134 million.
130 million books.
130 million books. Okay, wow, that's crazy.
Hold on, can you fact check it real quick?
I mean, even if you fact check it, I mean, who's counting that? Are we including ebooks? Is it like the person's book that got published that nobody bought? Like, is it? But that doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
It does not matter.
Why The Shack, bro?
Why The Shack? So The Shack has a couple of things in it that has manifested in my life.
Okay.
That's one. Two, The Shack was suggested to me by my father. And it was suggested by my father when he was incarcerated.
Okay.
And it's one that I decided to actually like read and do for real.
Yeah.
And then knowing you and knowing how you feel spiritually, I was like, okay, let's give him The Shack. And then I think that too, I am like like if a person was to ask me like my religious belief, I'm an unequivocal believer of God.
Okay.
Everything else is up for debate.
Okay.
Everything else. So, and because when I say God, when I make that statement, every Christian gets hype.
Yeah. Yes.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so does every Muslim person.
Yeah.
And so does everyone else who believes in God. But they ascribe that statement to mean whatever they think God is.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, that's the unequivocal part. But all of the rest of the doctrine and all of the rest of like how God manifests and what's the right narrow way, you know, those things are up for debate. And I think that The Shack is just an excellent portrayal of like the Christian experience, even in spaces where I'm like about the Christian experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why.
Okay. Yeah, that's what's up?
And I'll say lastly too, I said earlier that I think that The Shack is probably the best explanation of like the Trinity is what I really meant. The best explanation of the Trinity, like more so than the Bible itself. Like the Bible will have you like, so, but I think that The Shack's personification, which the Bible does too, but The Shack's personification is like much more relatable.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree actually with everything you just said. When I finished reading, as I was reading it, it was definitely one of those things that, you know, growing up, I told you a little bit about my childhood. Grew up in a Christian household. Grandfather was a preacher, uncles preachers, dad deacon, like involved in the church in any capacity.
Okay.
And so, you know, continuing to go throughout life after I got out of college, after I moved from Mississippi and just kind of experiencing life, different conversations with different people, my own type of, you know, middle of the night, looking at the sky, like talking to God type of moments. The Shack definitely was one of those books that, like you said, the personification of it really helped make God seem a little bit more relatable. If that kind of makes any
almost
sense.
like not tangible from a spiritual perspective, but tangible from a concept perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy reading it. Of course, this podcast is filled with plenty of spoilers. So if you do want to read the book and you don't want it spoiled, just cut off this episode and then cut it right back on when you're done. And then we're gonna just jump right into it. So that leads me to my next question, which was, which moment in the book was the most poignant for you? Like, which moment kind of just stuck out the most?
The most?
Yes, and you can get an honorable mention in there if you want to.
I feel like this moment may come up in multiple questions then.
Okay.
But mine is obviously when God takes, or when he's taken to the cave and he's forced to choose. And he's forced to choose between his children.
Yeah.
And like, which child, if you could save the child, like one still has to go, like which child do you save?
Yeah.
And like, it was so traumatic that instead of saving the children, he was like, fuck it, like I'll die.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that moment portrayed that way, which still would be like, that's kind of like a messed up position to have to put somebody in. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I mean, arguably, but nonetheless, that moment is probably like my most favorite moment because of just it puts you in a position to understand like having children and being in a position where like, oh my God, like something traumatic is happening. If you look at trauma as the world, and I have to like figure out who to save, like let me save both of them and I'll just sacrifice for me. So that's the like one that is the most let's say poignant is what you asked me. But my honorable mention is God being, it's like a two-parter.
Okay.
It's God being referred to as Papa.
Yeah.
But also being personified as a black woman.
Yeah. That actually, the Papa aspect is mine. And then my honorable mention is, it's actually in chapter 16. You got to forgive me. I got to flip through it. But to actually kind of piggyback off what you just said first, though, it was funny because at the top of the book, when they were riding to the destination from the family vacation, he was telling the story of the Indian girl who ultimately had to sacrifice herself for her tribe. And so, you know, this book deals, of course, a lot with sacrifice. And so, you know, I do actually like really appreciate that point right there. Like I said, my honorable mention is, it's in 243. This is on page 243, where when he goes back to the shack, he has three different conversations separately with Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Papa, Jesus, and Holy Spirit.
Or mom.
Mom at that one.
Yeah, right.
And so here he's having a conversation with, I believe this is with Jesus. And the conversation was about forgiveness. And I'm going to just read a quick excerpt from the story. Jesus is telling Mack, Jesus is telling Mack in reference to Mack forgiving the killer of his daughter. He's telling him, forgiveness is first for you, the forgiver, to release you from something that will eat you alive, that will destroy your joy and your ability to love fully and openly. Do you think this man cares about the pain and the torment you've been going through? If anything, he feeds on that knowledge. Don't you want to cut that off? And doing so, you'll release him from a burden that he carries, whether he knows it or not, acknowledges it or not. When you choose to forgive another, you love him well. I think forgiveness is universally difficult. I think the common person has a problem forgiving. In circumstances like this, where, you know, abduction, murder, like actual physical harm was done, is definitely one of those things that can take a person years. Sometimes the person just kind of carries it to their grave with them.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with forgiveness?
Do I struggle with forgiveness? No, I don't think that I struggle with forgiveness. But I also am a person who believes that that's not my job.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, at the end of the day, forgiveness to me is not like I forgive you. I can let most things go. Like if damn near not everything, like I can let things go, right? So I do think that I can let things go, but I'm not a believer per se of like, I forgive you toward specific things. Yeah. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's like a murder or like in this case, no. Like when you see people who have been, let's use this as an example because we probably have seen it publicly the most. Like when a person's killed by a cop or like something kind of like that happens, and then they usher in the family and they use the family to tell everybody to not riot. And then when the court case happens, they make that same family go up and call for peace. And then the family or sometimes go into the courtroom and turn to the like person and be like, I forgive you. You know, I'm not a believer of that.
Okay, yeah.
Like, that ain't none of my business. I don't forgive you for shit. Yeah. Like, you did what you did, and now that's gonna... And because I can't probably react the way that I want to react, that has to be between you and God, but I don't... It does not... Like, I actually do hope all of the negative things happen to you, but at the same time, it does not... I don't sit in the negativity itself. Like, I'm not, like, walking around like, damn, if I, like, I don't hold it to feel like I have to forgive it. Yeah. So the thing that they're saying, like... that you're doing forgiveness for, I don't do that part. Okay, yeah. So that's why the forgiveness itself is not necessarily hard for me, but I'm also, I don't know that, like, I'm always asking God for forgiveness because I know the shit I'm capable of. Yeah. You feel what I'm saying? And capable of because I've done. You feel what I'm saying? Like, so, like, I always am asking God for forgiveness, but, you know, like, I'm... You know, without going too like deep or far in it, but like I'm also not a believer of like every sin's just like is a sin. Yeah. Yeah, like I'm not a believer of that either. Yeah. So because I don't believe like maybe those measurements, I think that forgiveness has its own kind of measurement too. Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that was my honorable mention. Okay. You run off with my moment that really stuck out with me the most in this story was the Papa part. I'm glad you're doing this. Okay, tell me why. Because throughout the entirety of the book, he struggled to call God Papa. Mm-hmm. And so we see that, you know, after he, you know, has this time with them in the shack, I think it was 2 days, and, you know, just these different life lessons and these different understandings that he's just starting to, you know, come upon. Near the end, he ultimately is... He's so available, if you will, to where he can call God Papa. Mm-hmm. And the reason I thought it was so just brilliant is because specifically for men, I believe that there is a difficulty to submit to authority, especially in regards to faith. Like, I think men have a difficulty submitting to authority, and God being abstract to the majority of people in a way. I think that makes it difficult to truly give themselves to God. And am I kind of bouncing off the wall, or? No, I don't think so. I've always had a different reason why I think that people like struggle with the faith thing, but I never thought of it from a submissive perspective. Not submissive in the fact of... No, I know what you mean. Yeah. I know what you mean. I never thought of it from the perspective of like them having a challenge of like trusting an authority, like the authority of it. Yeah, I never viewed it that way. I always thought it was because people felt stupid. Like I thought that like by and large, if you are a visionary, if you are a person who sees things before they happen, or you're a person who's ahead of your time, or you're warning people, and even the literal act of like, I love praying. Like it is, because I also don't pray for like I don't pray like, Lord, God, let me have a good day today. Thank you for waking me up and thank you for the food. Amen. Like, I don't pray like that. So like, I enjoy the act of like, I said this and now I'm out here waiting on it like a phone call. Like, because I'm talking to something that just as much as you're responding to me, I have that expectation. So like, I think, but the actual act of praying to people who don't really believe looks and feels stupid. Yeah. And I think that that look or that feeling of being stupid is a way, I think that can be driven by the ego, right? So like it's one of those things where
it's one of those things that I'm trying to think of a good example. Man, you really got me on my toes. I think that we don't like to look stupid in general. Mm-hmm. And the act of, if my ego is even somewhat a little above the common person's ego, then I'm definitely not going to pray. I'm definitely not going to do certain things to a figure who I feel like isn't here. You know, faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. The majority of people I just need to go out and do it myself. Right. But I think also in the book, Mack was struggling with that because Mack had a horrible father figure. Apparently, his father beat him. His father would actually, I think the story said his father would actually get drunk and then read him the scriptures and things like that. And so it was very
traumatic.
Yeah. So, you know, the difficulty of addressing somebody as Papa, especially somebody who you just cannot physically see, and you're just assuming that, you know, that connection is, you're assuming that the connection is real. I think that we have a problem with that because we are very tangible people. We have to see it. We have to touch it. It has to be
it's real. Illogical.
Yeah.
Like, it's illogical because, like, to me, the stupid factor is more rooted in the fact that it literally is illogical. Like, so you're telling me that I'm going to, like, just pray and ask for something, and as they would say, like, some man in the sky is going to, because that's how it's been taught to them.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the perspective that they have. And so that feels illogical. But without even, because I'm sure we'll go into that. But, like, more so the illogical factors of, like, you're asking me to, like, I'm just going to ask for something and it happens. Like, no, you have to do X, Y, and Z. When the truth is that, like, literally nothing exists until it exists. Like, not the next 5 minutes. In good faith, we are all recording right now and everything's going to go well. We have no clue about how the power is going to hold up. We have no clue about, like, what's happening on the street or what we'll hear outside that may change our lives forever. Positive or challenged, whatever, you know, because there is literally no existence of anything until it is. Yeah. Like, people have a hard time perceiving that, like, maybe people don't think about just how much your life actually changes in split seconds versus like long periods. You feel what I'm saying? So, like, everything's steady until the split second. And so I think that because it feels like I'm just sitting here like fucking talking to myself and expecting some shit to happen, like, I think that that is a very vulnerable thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And because it's a vulnerable thing to do, and then to have confidence after, like, you get up, like, having just talked to yourself, like, now I feel better.
Yeah.
Seems like odd, you know, just from a outer body experience. Like, if you were to just walk in, you have faith, or the people who are watching have faith. So maybe not to them, but to a person who doesn't, if you walk into a room and just saw a person, like, going off talking to themselves, you would think that, well, maybe either there's something mental or, like, I'm interrupting something. I don't really know what's going on. And so I think that that vulnerability and the, like, last part I'll say too is that it was taught to me by my grandmother, how do you expect God to answer you? Like, that was always the question. Like, are you literally expecting somebody to say, like, hey, stop?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or are you expecting somebody to, like, be a voice out of the sky? Or, like, how do you know you've been answered? Because you'll still be praying for the same thing and already got the answer if you don't know how. Yeah. So, like, God ultimately is a language, and you have to learn your language with God, just like you learned English or any other language. And if you don't, like, figure out the language and the blessing pattern and, like, the way that you and God actually communicates back to, then doing that exercise feels like pointless.
And that's ultimately why I think, like, the Papa aspect was just so monumental to me, because, again, like, you can't quantify, you truly can't quantify spiritual growth, right? You can quantify, you know, career growth, you know, physical growth and things like that. You know, you can step on the scale and kind of see what's going on. Like, in terms of spiritual growth, you can't sit back and, like, measure that. And so I think that again, it's one of those things that people can't necessarily keep track on it. So spiritual maintenance is lacking. And so, yeah, I think ultimately when it came to Mack, to go through the situation that he did, to go through this situation at the beginning of the story that he did, experience God in so many different facets throughout the story. Then, like you said, one of your favorite parts was, all right, now you have the choice to choose your children or, yourself. So, it's one of those things.
Well, he didn't have the choice to choose himself.
That's right. It was a choice between, it was a couple of kids, right?
He had a choice between the kids, and he ultimately begged for it to be himself.
Yeah. I think that is, I forgot the point that I was trying to make with it. But ultimately, I think that when it comes to the spiritual side of it, faith is such a strong thing because you really have nothing to rely on except like that thing that's pulling at your heart. And so I guess for me, I really would like to just see us as people, specifically us as black men. Put my black man on the spot. I'd love to see us as black men just exercise our faith more. Talk to me.
I think that it has to be made a little bit more practical, and then maybe a person would faith literally is everything. Like it's I have the faith that I can tap my foot, so I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But there's literally people trying to figure out how to put pressure on their foot again.
Yeah.
And they have the faith, but they can't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So me getting up to go get some water or anything like that, or being able to even adjust, is literally life-saving.
Yeah.
Literally life-saving. There are literally people by not being able to move can die.
Yeah.
And that's faith as much as everything that we have that is not natural, everything that we have that is literally not natural started as faith. Yeah. Every idea, your shirt was somebody's idea. It ended up on a press and through all these different processes. The floor, the building, the lights, the mic, every single thing, the couch that I'm sitting on everything started in blank. And then it ended up here. And so we would say the work brought it here, but they could have been doing all of this work and died. They could have been doing all of this work and then the materials ran out. They could have done all of this work and then the machine broke and they had no fixes for it. Anything can happen to prevent from the work that you're doing. So as much as we say that faith without works is dead, which is true, kinda, to me, kinda, it's true. But at the same time, there may be a time in your life where you can't work, but you have faith and it's necessary. Yeah. And you get results by the fact that you can't work.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You feel what I'm saying? So I think that people who don't exercise faith don't see the practicality. They're trying to and most of them tend to be practical people.
Yeah.
Most people who are entrepreneurs or dreamers or it's a little easier to have the ideas of faith.
Which is funny because God, in the book, God was telling Mack, you have to shed that independence in order to kind of really be one with me. That's why I have you on the podcast, bro. I know you're going to be coming in dropping gems off rip, bro. Off rip. We're going to go ahead and jump to the next question. I'm sure you have far more gems you got going on. This next one I proposed to you was, what was your favorite chapter? And you said you wanted to kind of specifically hit another point in that. So talk to me.
So the moment of meeting God and God being a black woman and then having to go through this, he's on a retreat with God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And each of them are different in personality and interest. And so I think that the moment of meeting God and God's welcome is big and black and womanly and cooking and you know what I'm saying?
My grandmother's gonna love this podcast.
Excuse me.
No, keep going.
As stereotypical as it might have been, it's just so beautiful that a black woman's personification feels like God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then to have been raised by them and all their turmoil and all of their wisdom, and a lot of that turmoil and wisdom come together hand in hand. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that even for this white man who has a hard time believing that God is even a thing, like a black woman's welcome and like love and vernacular and conversation and presence immediately was like proof of God.
Yeah.
And so like that chapter of surprise for me was like was a thing. That moment of surprise was a thing for me. You know what I mean?
I don't even mean to cut you off, but I definitely was kind of, when I was flipping through, I saw, oh, God is a black woman. And of course we always hear that. But like to know that this was a white author and the protagonist was a white man, for it to be a black woman as God, I was like, okay, this is, it just kind of made it a little bit easier.
Sense.
Yeah, made it a little easier to read.
I mean, and it makes sense. I mean, like, even if you threw history behind it in the position that black women like played as like treacherous as it is to imagine that like you can't use the toilet or eat off the spoon, but your body can feed the children.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's wild.
Yeah.
So like that's a very God-like experience. Like we know you're God enough to nurture, but we don't know if you're God enough.
We know you're God enough to take care of our children.
Yeah. To feed
our
them
children
from your body.
But you can't use the same amenities that we use.
So from a value perspective, like personally, like all of the food and amenities was not the value. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Like we don't want you to eat off of this, but like feed the kid. Yeah. So that really ain't worth that much.
I was reading this other book. Shout out Margaret Walker Jubilee. Quick tangent. The slave master, he grew up with this black woman who was, the slave master, of course, grew up in this White House. Yeah. But there was a black woman who, her name was Aunt Sally, and
she raised him.
She raised him, and near the end or near the middle of the story, his wife made him sell her, and he was so heartbroken. And then she was just kind of like, she's a slave. But it was just one of those things where it was just like, nah, it was just something different. Like, it's just the spirit of a black woman, like just the ability, like you said, to be under all that turmoil, under all that stress, and to still lead with selflessness. Still be caring, still be nurturing. I mean, this is a personification of God. You know, I mean, ultimately, because even if we look at the very basics of it, of God and creation of humanity and a humanity that curses God, we can look at the Israelites, the children of Israel being led out of Egypt. Why are we doing this? What's going on? And God still being like, okay, let's keep them on the track. I'm gonna keep feeding them. I'm gonna keep preparing for them. Split this whole sea for them. Like, yeah. Anymore, I actually kind of like that one. I'm upset that I didn't pick that one.
Yeah, no, that was the moment for me. I definitely like the time with the Holy Spirit and like how whimsical it felt. I mention later
the reason I love the chapter so much was because, I mean, just the writing in this was just ridiculous. Some of the things, like he said, freedom is an incremental process. And one of my favorite quotes, honestly, was when he was talking to God. He said, when God was talking to him, he said, "Let me say for now that we know once the creation was broken, true fathering would be much more lacking than mothering. Don't misunderstand me. Both are needed, but an emphasis on fathering is necessary because of the enormity of its absence." And so that part even tying into the papa aspect of it.
What does that mean to you? What is the enormity of, like, why is it so important? Because the enormity of a father's absence.
I think that while the mother is very nurturing, very caring, the father just brings, like, the father is like the locomotive on a train. Okay. In which, like, he has to keep things going regardless of what the weather is outside. Like, the train's gonna keep moving, it's gonna have to keep bearing. And then also the father is he's the example for both the man and the woman, or the boy and the girl.
All right.
Whereas I can speak on my own relationships with both my parents, very good relationships with both my parents. Love them dearly. I loved my mother. I love my mother. And, you know, whatever she says, whatever she, you know, she raised me the whole nine, like, good mother. With my father, there was just aspects of discipline. There was aspects of understanding manhood. And
what is manhood to you?
Manhood to me is doing what needs to be done regardless of how you feel about it, remaining consistent, being honest, having the tough conversations regardless if you don't want to have those conversations. And then I think also manhood is being genuinely honest with anybody regardless of the circumstance. And so I think that while the mothering is definitely more emotional, the father is a little bit more practical, to where it's like these things have to be done regardless of how you feel. And so that's why I think ultimately when he talks in the book, like, you know, there's going to be, if there's not enough fathering in the world, practicality is really not going to happen. We need some type of structure in place to kind of be able to manage all of these emotions and all of this complexity within the world. So why did you ask me that question? I'm the one conducting the
I know, but I can't help it. I think because I disagree with it.
I love to hear disagreements.
I do. Everything that you just said, I can introduce you to a woman that I feel like is exactly that.
Okay.
And not only can I introduce you to a woman that I think is exactly that, I think that she has a harder time being respected as that because she's a woman. And oftentimes it's almost as if, like, you know, women have to prove that they're right when they're right, and just being honest. And maybe it's just the distance between men and women, you know, genetically, that makes men feel like a woman cannot stand in that position. Because when I just asked you what manhood was, you didn't really name anything to me that I think, in my personal opinion, are specific attributes to being the actual man. That's attributes to being solid. To me. You feel what I'm saying? And that type of solid, I have sat down with the best producer I know is a woman.
Okay.
My mentors are women. And I've been put in meetings and been text on the side like, say this, say this, say this. This is what they're looking for. You know what I mean? Or like, you know what I'm saying? Hey, like, don't do that. That's f***ing stupid. You know what I'm saying? And it's coming from a woman and like, thank you, solid. I appreciate that. And I've had very solid men, but the mouths that a woman will go are a lot different than when I'm asking a man for something. So I think that's part of my disagreement toward it too. And I also feel like, you know, now this is just maybe, I don't know, controversial.
Go ahead, bro.
But whenever there's danger, who do you send into it?
You send a man.
Why do you send a man into something and his absence is so valuable? Like, why do you send a man to potentially go get killed for everything that's here, but his absence is the one that's valuable?
Because, because you believe that the man can solve it. If it's dangerous, you feel like the man is more susceptible and, in my ability, more capable of confronting that danger.
Like physically.
Physically, yes. And even, I guess even, yes, physically, and even from the public perception. Like, even if we look at history, right? Martin Luther King was the one that we all hail. Martin Luther King, though, or Malcolm,
depends on where you are.
Nevertheless, though,
or Marcus,
whichever way you feel.
We can leave it at Martin.
I think that the point that I was reading with Martin there was that Martin was educated in school by Septima Clark, who was considered the godmother of the civil rights movement. And so it's one of those things that, you know, like you said in the book, the mothering is definitely needed. And both of them play a very intricate part. But in terms of like being on the forefront, receiving those blows initially to kind of soften it for the next generation behind you, men are more physically capable of taking on all of that danger than women are.
Okay.
My perception on it.
I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'll just say that like you tend to put up the disposable first. And why I like this book is because God itself is a woman.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it just makes so much sense that a woman would send a man to die. You feel what I'm saying?
Yep.
I just ask you that. Like, why would you, if a man is so valuable, why do you send the man to die? Like, in danger. Why y'all both don't go? You get what I'm saying? Like, why y'all, like, maybe you just hide over here, but if we both go and I come over here, maybe we can trick them.
Yeah.
Or something, but that's not the perception. So I just don't, I think that we've been well trained that the absence of the man matters most, but a lot of people have mommy issues.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like, it's something to the fact, to me, that our participation in the baby making process or the life making process is only the best parts. It matters this much. But for the 10 months and the months after, literally the feeding physically, the physical like coming into, all of those things are all on her. And I just can't imagine, like, you know, you've seen villages of women really raise up great things, you know? And I think that the imbalance of what things are is because we have said as men that we're just more valuable. And I don't know that's the part that I never can kind of reconcile. And the last part I say, because I don't want to move you from your questions or points.
This is your podcast.
Well, good. I'm glad. So last thing I'll say though is like me and my homeboy had this conversation literally 2 weeks ago about what manhood is.
Okay.
And I didn't use the same example that I just did, but I said with everything that you just named, right? Like you consider those masculine traits if they're attached to manhood? Yeah, I would guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if a man came in heels and was like, ooh, child, and sat down with all of those traits, you wouldn't be like, now that's the beacon of manhood. So it has to be something else. Like these attributes that we amplify ourselves behind, that we strip from women to be able to be.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Which to me are just attributes of being solid. And God is solid for me.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Like we have created all of the personifications that, as we mentioned earlier, our ego, in my opinion, like that we need in order to say that, like, now that makes me a man, that makes that person a woman, that makes God this or that. But God was very malleable in this book.
Yeah.
It's why I liked it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's why I said that it has a better explanation of the Trinity than the Bible itself, because the Bible sounds as if it's talking to men. You get what I'm saying? Like the Bible sounds as if it's like a master class for men. And well, you're a woman, so I mean, at the end of the day, you fit in here.
Yeah.
But you know, if we let you fit in too far, you're gonna be the reason for periods. You're gonna be the reason for, you get what I'm saying? Like you're gonna be the reason for the downfall.
Yeah.
So like in this particular space, I appreciate the fact that like the woman was amplified to be able to be God too.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I asked that. Like, I'm not saying that the absence of manhood, because I just saw it yesterday. I went into somewhere and I like peeped like almost a generational of like manhood absence happening.
Where talk on it. If you can.
It was in a house. I was at someone's house and I just noticed that like there was like a difference between my presence and the presence of those that they were used to. And so when I said something, it had a different response. Yeah. And then when others said something, and others were also men, but when others said something, it didn't have the same response. And there's like really some irony in this, but like, I don't consider my presence to have been like manly per se.
Why do you do that?
Because I feel like that's what we think about. Like it's fucking manly. I came in all like, I wasn't. I was really just loving and being like, oh, so you doing da da da. I was treating them as equal, but also at the same time like, hey, stop.
For my people who are listening to the podcast and not viewing it, Free is up here flexing his muscles like that's just what.
Because you're also sitting very, you know what I'm saying, like sized up.
I'm comfortable.
You know what I mean? But nonetheless,
this is a good couch. Shout out to Fourth Park, bro. I like the couch.
Great couch, great setting. But nonetheless, like I don't feel like my presence when I walked in was any more masculine or manly than some of the others that might have came in. I think that it was just more intentional.
Okay.
And I think that because of that differentiating factor, it made everybody, whether adult or child, kind of stand up. And it's something that I just kind of peeped. And I didn't make a thing of it. But I don't know. I bring that up because I do recognize how the absence of a solid and intentional presence creates a very like not just loose but confused environment. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I am any less confused. Mm-hmm. It just means that like that presence feels a little bit more confident when that other person walks in. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I feel like that intentional presence is paying attention to me. Yeah. And it feels like it cares how I move and think and, you know, like corrects and also like makes me think about it. That's a good point. You know, it feels good. Mm-hmm. And I attribute that to God. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the solid aspects, I think, more so than the gendered ones maybe.
Are you a God? That's not a question. Let's go. I'm just
No.
I think you get a couple more shots in me. I definitely think we are gods, but we'll save that for a different conversation. Podcast? Yeah.
Okay.
I think grandmother's still listening. I have to make her proud.
Oh, well then don't lie, man.
I'm not lying. Be quiet.
Okay. Even if it's a difficult conversation, go ahead and have it.
Nah. It's okay. I agree with you though. I agree with everything you were saying. I'm very fortunate to have you on the podcast, bro. For those who don't know, like Free is that guy.
No.
Free is that guy.
No.
Met him at my job. I'm not gonna shout my job out.
I'm not. This is the job for real, and this is your world.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, man. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming out. So we're gonna jump into that fourth question.
Okay.
How did this book shape your perception of God or impact it? Because first off, when did you read the book?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. It's somewhere between like 2010 and 2013, somewhere around like that window of time.
Okay.
Because it had been told to me for some time, and I just hadn't done it, and then I ended up doing it. But somewhere around then, because I went through like a really like rebirthing period, and I think that happens like damn near every decade. Mm-hmm. And so it helped me, like I said, see the Trinity sensibly.
Yeah.
As I started off with, I'm an unequivocal believer in God. You cannot debate me, nothing to make me not believe that God is real, God exists, God responds, God is interactive, God is alive. It is a mutual experience. It's responsive. All of the things, right? I can talk to the end and not have enough. But the Trinity, or maybe even Jesus sometimes, and or Jesus's story, never like always kind of was like a I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And while it still is that to me today, it made me be able to be like, that's how it looks. I can see that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I respect that even. You know what I mean? Like and not only do I respect that, that's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that moment made me like lean a little deeper into like the possibilities.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's if I can kind of like answer that question with some of the quotes that I was getting from the book. One of the quotes that really stuck out to me, again, this was Jesus talking to Mack. Just a lot of the conversation between Jesus and Mack were just like, I felt like as if I was Mack. But Jesus is talking to him. He said, our earth is like a child who has grown up without parents, having no one to guide and direct her. Some have attempted to help her, but most have simply tried to use her. Humans who have been given the task to lovingly steer the world Instead, plunder her with no consideration other than their immediate needs. And they give little thought to their own children, who will inherit their lack of love. So they use her and abuse her with little consideration, and then when she shunders and blows her breath, they are offended and raise their fist at God. So
can I say something to that?
Run with it, bro.
So like this for adults. Like
yes.
This podcast.
You've
for
been
adults?
cursing for.
Okay, I need it to really be for adults. Okay. So I have a friend who said to me that men don't see sex as something that they do with a woman. They see it as something that they do to a woman. And
speak on this shit. Let's go. Sorry, Grandma.
And that I'm already advocate here, right?
Yeah.
But that was like, damn. Like that's the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Like if you even think about how men discuss sex, it is not that we did or she allowed. It was like, or not even that she allowed. It was like I did, I did. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I went in there and did blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's very like self-centered.
Yeah.
And looked at as something that I do to you. So you essentially are just like a part of a process.
Yeah.
Which I also believe is rooted in what I said biblically too. Like, because the Bible feels as if we're talking and teaching men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So as that was just described, it sounded like that perception of sex. Mm-hmm. Like, because earth gives you life, but you're like plundering and beating the shit out of it. And then when it finally is kind of like, I'm tired of this shit.
Yeah.
You're kind of like,
why God?
Why God doesn't it love me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and I think that it's not like it's not to say that like the problem is men. I'm not saying that. But I think that there really is like this lack of like, just chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like, dog. Never that fucking serious, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, most of the best things come absolutely natural.
Yeah.
Like, you don't gotta force, you don't gotta do nothing. Like, it's just process of relaxing, kind of.
Yeah.
And more or less. And like, turn up a little bit, I gotta do a little more. But systemically and culturally, like, we have been placed in this position of like grind. And anything that you grind, rust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Coming with the quotes.
Like, so it's just
anything that you grind, rust.
It's true. It's true. And like at the spiritual level, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Like, and at the life level, that's not really how it works. So I think that that quote just made me think of that, and that quote made me see like the man-woman kind of dynamic thing, and it made me see like our like self-imposed importance. And I think that one of the reasons why, it's not that women have anything easier, because I don't believe that, but like one of the reasons why their process looks so different is because they don't get a choice at self-imposed importance. You know what I mean? So because we believe our whole approach is very like, we're God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so important that shit's gonna die if it don't happen. Or like, I gotta go out and do like, no, maybe not. Just chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and see allow God to prove that.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? So like, I love that quote.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
was a good one.
This book is like filled with a lot of quotes that just made me underline and just like pause and just really like reflect on my own things that I'm battling or the things that I need to work on. I have I have several quotes in here, but like some of them that just really just jumped out at me. Another one was, this is near the end, and God is talking to Mack, and she's telling him, don't forget that in the midst of all of your pain and heartache, you are surrounded by beauty, the wonder of creation, art, your music and culture, the sounds of laughter and love, of whispered hopes and celebrations, of new life and transformation, of reconciliation and forgiveness. These are all the results of your choices, and every choice matters, even the hidden ones. That to me, of course, that kind of just really summarizes the entire book for me, because again, we see a man who's going through trauma, and God is telling him, amid all this trauma, understand the beautiful things that are going on in society, going on in your world more so. And you know, it's difficult. I've lost loved ones, but not to this extent, of course. But you know, it's just one of those things that, like you said, this book really makes God seem very tangible. Like I'm sitting across from him in the room. And I would hope that for anybody who is watching the podcast and like, let me pick this book up, if you are going through certain things, I feel like this book can help you at least get to the next step. Make, you know what I'm saying, like understand
it's just calming too. Like I think that after you read it, it's kind of like, you know, even that last quote that you said is a thought. It was confirming too. It's calming, it's confirming, affirming. All of that. I enjoy travel, and so I have been to places where I was like, I think that it's important for people to like marvel at the world. Like I actually think that it is something that we're supposed to do. And be able to kind of like sit back and just be like, dang, it's a nice breeze. You know what I'm saying? Or like, look at that tree. Like, you see how it's blowing? Like, things that sound like just for what? It's very important, because then it recenters and reconnects you with God. It reconnects you with yourself. And it kind of like starts to frame up life around you. And I've been places where I'm like, you know what? My goal is to remember that in the middle of dealing with like shit that feels like, why am I going through this? That like the Grand Canyon is still like where it's at right now. Like literally simultaneously. Like, while if you feel like you ain't got money, like the ocean is still like just creating waves. Like everything's fine. Everything's still, the pyramid's still intact. You feel what I'm saying?
I'll tell you something. Like one of the most calming things to me is listening to birds sing. Like when I grew up in the country, and that's like I can make the sounds there. Like just sitting back listening to birds sing is just so relaxing and soothing. Because kind of like reading, it slows my day down. It helps me realize, okay, I have right now in front of me. Don't worry about that. Today's what? Monday? I can't worry about Friday's problems. Friday may never come. I only have Monday that I'm dealing with.
Or it's just probably solved by Friday.
Or it's just probably, it's
likely solved by Friday.
Exactly. So it's, yeah, man, this hour kind of flew by. And I actually knew it was going to fly by too, because I was like, we chop all the time at said place of occupation. And so I hope the Negroes watch.
It's a strip club.
Oh man, so yeah, bro, I got so my last question I hit everybody with this question is, if you could grab this book right here and walk up to somebody and hand it to them, who would that individual be? And why?
It would be somebody that is at a position where they think that there's no other options in life. And the reason why is because, like, you know, I can't guarantee that like tomorrow feels better per se, but I can guarantee that things always change. You know what I'm saying? And I think that the longer that you have time, some things may never feel the same, but they will change. And no matter what has happened, it was always going to change regardless. The how is kind of where we get a little stuck, and I think that person like deserves to see something that's just possible. And you don't have to necessarily like, you don't have to be religious or like even think that it's a good story. I agree. I think that I have a few people in my life who, you know, we have our religious conversations. I actually have a good buddy who's a pastor down in Alabama. Shout out my boy Loudly. I know he's gonna probably watch the episode. My boy Loud just became the president of Huntsville Bible College down in congratulations,
in Huntsville, Alabama. So shout out my guy. But I'd actually love to have a dialogue with him about this book, just because, you know, in order to get the position that he got, you know, there's a lot of studies that happens. But yeah, man, it looks like our time is coming to an end, man. You've, of course, came in and killed it. Sorry about that. I'm very fortunate, of course, for real, for real.
No,
I know you got a million things going on in life, bro. For you to give me your time, I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you for having me.
We're definitely gonna chop, man. Props. I mean, best of luck and much success to you and venturing out west, dealing with them people out there. I'm gonna get you back on, man. Season 2, bro. Once I get season 1 kind of wrapped up and things like that, season 2, we gotta make it happen, bro.
Just let me know. I appreciate you inviting me to do it. I appreciate the fact that I see you actually doing things that we discussed, because that started in phase 2.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I actually appreciate that shit do happen.
Yeah, but yeah, man, I would ask, where can the people find you, but I'm gonna post all this information when I put up all the description and everything. I'm still kind of getting used to having a podcast.
You did really well. I mean, your counting and stuff, like, that was all good.
Yeah.
Your intro was good.
Was it? Okay, cool. My outro's about to be absolutely horrible.
Yeah, it's okay. just let it be natural. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, it's natural. Like, I'm a natural, like, yeah, we're done.
Okay.
But yeah, bro, this was, of course, another episode of the Cover2Cover podcast. You have to check out this book, The Shack. Ebook, Kindle, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, whatever. Go support the local bookstores. Do all those things. But whatever you do, just pick up a book, read a couple pages a day. And I am Jaron Bingham. We will see you guys later.